I think the word ambition only shows up 2 times in the New Testament, and one of them is make it your ambition to live a quiet life. That is not going to get you book deals. That is not going to get you on the speaking circuit. Like I don't hear a lot of influencers saying, "Hey, young preachers, young communicators, whatever. Here's the thing: you should strive to live a quiet life." I don't hear a lot of that. And maybe there's reason for that.
Well, happy belated birthday, my man. Welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks, man. It's been too long. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, you're welcome. So we're just going to go for it. We're the same age, and I told you selfishly, I just want to ask some questions of a man I greatly respect, you.
Thanks.
What's the transition into midlife look like for you so far?
I mean, other than my knees hurt a lot more than they ever have. I literally right now, like my right knee is in.
Really?
Yeah, man. It was like the day after my birthday. I'm like, oh, that's hilarious. I can't, I'm like hobbling around the house right now. But other than that, 40 was a bit of a moment for me. I think I started thinking a lot less about honing my own craft and a whole lot more about, man, who am I investing in? Who am I raising up? Who am I actually walking with? Not just, a speaking thing here or there. Like that has been, the heat on that has been turned up in the best sense. I think, having kids has helped crystallize a lot of that for me. It's helped me prioritize some things. I wish it hadn't taken me till 40, to be honest. I feel like some of these things, I'm like, yeah, that you could have also made that change in 30 or 20. But I am thinking a lot more these days, generationally, even with our staff, man. Like, how are we raising up the next generation of pastors and shepherds and communicators and preachers? And that's been a real joy, because it doesn't feel like it was that long ago that I was finishing up undergrad and these like wiser older mentors were taking me under their wing, and I'm like doing the math and I'm like, some of these guys were the age that I am right now. That's such a trip, but it's been really reading Strength to Strength. I don't know if you've read that or not. That was a really
a really I talk about it all the time to friends.
That just gave so much language. So I was like, oh, that's what I'm feeling, and that's been helpful.
Let's go right there just for a second, because
Sure.
I want to nuance this. So when did you start to notice, like Brooks talks about, fluid intelligence and that
Yes.
curve
Yes.
stopping? What was the transition to the crystallized intelligence like for you? Because for me, it is jarring, and it is confrontational.
Yes.
And it makes me feel like I'm standing on thin ice.
Oh,
That's
wow.
the part I wish he would have drilled down on more.
Yeah.
Is the jarring nature of the transition. What's that been like for you?
I'm glad you said that, man, because I was going to say the same thing. It is not past tense for me. I'm still in the midst of it. And it has been jarring, especially when I think for 20 years, you develop almost a muscle memory for the way that your brain works, or what you contribute to a team, or how I know where I operate. You get comfortable even in a good sense of the word. Like, I know what I'm good at and what I'm not. I kind of know the places where my contribution I think is helpful and where my ego is getting in the way. And that shift has been hard, because it does feel like new territory in a lot of regards. It's like, I don't think I'm bringing to the table what I did 15 years ago. And Brooks talks about this. There's a strange amount of identity that is wrapped up in that. This feels like Christianity 101, like you are not the sum of your accomplishments, and I preach that and I say that. But then when you start to feel some of that, like even what you're saying, jarringly shift. What I appreciate about you, man, is that you're so thoughtful to give space and language to it, where I think a lot of people just spend the next 20 years fighting it and pretending that it's not there. So that was kind of my encouragement. Like, I'm going to lean into the skid on this one and invite more people to speak into my life, not less. To even in some ways systematize, like, am I regularly allowing people to say, hey, you might have been good at this in the 90s. You're not the guy for this right now. Like, we need you in a different scope or in a different space. That has been, jarring is the perfect word for it. It's not, my equilibrium has been, I feel like I'm walking a slack line. Like, I'm not there's a certain sense of like, oh, I think I need to account for some balance issues maybe here or there and be a little more. It's led me to a lot of curiosity, which has been a helpful byproduct of it. It's just made me so much more curious about leadership and my own wiring and what the future looks like and other people, to be honest. Like there's something about being 21 and assuming you know the kind of leader you're going to be in 20 years, like just the hubris of 20. Yeah, exactly. We had no idea what we were talking about at 21. We read 2 leadership books and we thought that
How about
were
the hubris
set.
at 35?
It's wild. But it feels like there's I don't know, like a genuine excitement for the future and like what God I think is pulling out of me that I wasn't quite sure was there or would ever be there, and just leaning in with questions.
I love you for this. I don't know if I have the faith for it. I don't know if I'm that excited yet. It's really jarring. I want to ask you this, dude, because you were talking about how it feels like the equilibrium is off.
Mm-hmm.
Do you lean in more then? So if you're on the slack line,
Yeah.
what's your reflex? Because my reflex is to get my equilibrium back, which means I'm going to... The reflex is to go back to self-trust, to lean on my own insight and understanding so I don't freaking fall off the slack line.
Sure.
Or do you lean in more? And I feel like the invitation from the Lord is, it's like this. Here's the picture I have in my head. Jesus is standing before us with a sword. The tip of the sword is right at our chest. And he says, come here. 1 inch more, that thing's going in.
Yeah.
And that's a gross metaphor, and I'm not trying to be crude with any of it, but I feel like that's it. Like when the equilibrium is off, if we're going from strength to strength, let's talk about what happens between the strength and the strength.
Wow.
Is it for you, bro? I'm going to lean into the fact that the equilibrium is off, and I'm just going to fall off this thing. Or is your reflex to go, I don't like how this feels. Lord, you're going to have to work with me longer.
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
That's a great question, man. I think it depends. I can certainly relate to, I was telling our church yesterday that when it comes to like the Lord revealing something in my heart, that historically I've been he has to make me tap out on the mat kind of a guy. And I don't like that. Part of what I was requesting of them, I said, repent sooner. Like surrender quicker. I'm telling you.
I'm so glad you said that.
I wish someone had told. I'm sure someone did tell me, and I just wasn't listening. So like, there's an aspect of that self trust that I am comfortable going back to, but I also feel like in this season, and a lot of this is a testament to my wife and trusted mentors and friends that encourage me to lean in even when it's scary. It's like that scene in Indiana Jones, where like the bridge is appearing, but only as he's taking the steps. I feel like I've been sitting with that image lately. Like, hey, you might not see this whole thing, but it does feel like, all right, Lord, it's like a bounded set versus a centered set. Like I just want to make sure that my trajectory, Jesus, I think that you are this direction, so I'm gonna keep putting one foot in front of the next on this slack line, even though I'm not quite sure 10 years down the road what this looks like. But I'm thinking more in terms of like the alignment of a compass, and less like I need every step of this blueprint. I'm like, just give me general trajectory, and then let's just kind of go exploring together. This idea of kingdom work as excavation. Like, Lord, just help me to unearth what it is that you're doing right in my midst. I don't think that you're any more over there than you are right here, and I just want to lean in with, all right, I'm assuming that you are as alive and active in these mundane moments of whatever my existence is as you are in whatever ideal future I have. And so I want to be curious, not just about the big, gigantic, cosmic things, but like I've not historically done a great job of being curious in the mundane middle moments. And I think that is almost a bigger challenge for me. That's what's so strange. It is strange to me how often I will trust God with my eternity, but not my present. You know, this like picture of, yes, you hold the cosmos and my soul and heaven, but I'm having a hard time trusting you with like this budget meeting right here, you know? And that's when I tend to like kind of scramble and lean back to my own intellect and my own experience, my own acumen. Those are in a lot of ways, the bigger battles for me is those seemingly insignificant moments of self-reliance. That's the harder war for me most of the time.
We'll get back to this, but I'm just curious. It just kind of popped in my head because your birthday was just last week, and like, how do you think your boys see you today than they did even 5 years ago?
Oh man. I mean, my 2-year-old is having a lot of fun calling me a poo-poo head right now. That's his favorite. It's his favorite title.
Oh my gosh.
With affectionately, of course. I've been trying to ask them more questions like that, man. We have a Friday tradition. You know, I don't work on Fridays, so I pick them up from school, and we call it Friday Fun Day. And the whole rule is they get to pick where we go for the next 3 hours. That's up to them. And that's been a really sweet space to ask them more inquisitive questions, not just about their day, or did they have fun, or what they learn, but kind of how they see the world. And this will sound really naive, but 7 and 6-year-olds pay attention to a whole lot more than I think people realize. I don't have a lot of memories from that young. I don't know how good your memory is, but like, I don't feel like a lot of that is accessible for me until 10 or 11, and I think sometimes that has subconsciously led me to wonder how much they're thinking about these things. But man, when I lean in and ask them about our family, a lot of it comes out in the language of values. Like, hey, what do we value as a family? You know, I try to tell them, this is a little cliche, a little Dallas Willardy. I'll say, hey, what you do matters, but who you become matters more. I want to always keep this become language in front of them. Yes, I want them to make good choices. Yes, I want them to not scream at their brother. But I don't want it to ever be far from their conscience. Like, hey, as we're talking about who we are and how you see me and how like, I do care about what you do. I care more about who you're becoming. And that has helped me frame, who do they see me becoming? I'm not a fully actualized, fully arrived. I'm also in process. I'm at a church in the South, and I've never lived in the South, and they're witnessing that too. You know, like, I'm close to the age my father was when I left home, which was such a seismic moment. And that's given me so much more perspective and understanding. Because I feel pretty young still, to be honest. But when I left home,
Same.
I felt like, oh man, my parents are, you know, they're senior citizens. I'm like, you were in your 40s that is why you were also still becoming who you're becoming. And I don't know, that's been pretty sweet in this season, even just to see them interact with their grandfather and how I just feel really, really grateful to get some of those glimpses, you know.
My almost 6-year-old niece was laying in my lap a couple of months ago, and I was just kind of rubbing her back, and she's 6 going on 20, so we have just these like legit conversations, and she's wicked smart.
I love
we
it.
were talking, and believe it, she was like helping me pick out a pair of frames from Warby Parker. And we were talking about something else, and she kind of leans up and looks at me, and she says, we were talking about something. She says, Uncle Chris, I think you should think about that differently. I was like, what?
Wow.
Okay, sweetheart. So the reason I say that is because what you said about your boys, your 2 older boys, and how they just see and receive. Now, this is interesting that you brought that up, because you've said this now twice. We began our conversation talking about the shift in your life from what am I making to who am I walking with, and who am I becoming. So maybe one of the things that we could give to people joined with us today is a nugget, a key. What's the differentiator in your spirit that turns the key on the becoming door versus the content producing door? Because it's a very subtle shift, and it re-aims our focus, and I think gives us greater longevity. I know that's a pretty far reach, but I'm going to go with it actually for a second. What's the differentiator that even comes into play with the boys at home?
That's great,
because you're not Pastor Ian at
That's
home.
right.
You're Papa.
That's right. They actually couldn't care less about any accomplishments that I would, if I wanted to, brag on accolade. Like that, it is the ultimate. It's the most sanctifying thing I've ever done. Becoming a
Was
dad.
that being a dad?
Yeah,
Really?
yeah. I honestly thought before I became a father that I was a patient person. Legitimately, I was like, I think I'm doing pretty good in this area. And then I got a front row seat to my own brokenness. I'm like, I have a long way to go here still. So I think I appreciate you saying that it's subtle, because it really is, and I wish more people recognize that. We sometimes talk in cliches, and I do too. You know, I have to always fight that. Like, hey, this might be clever, but that's not actually true. Like, oh, it's not what you do, it's who you become. You're like, hey, I think everybody would love to make that mental shift if it were that easy. I think some of what you were saying before we recorded to the crock pot versus microwave imagery has always been helpful for me. You know, we're every day we're making choices, obviously, but to have a perspective that asks, how are these contributing to, how are these stirring or dulling my affections for Jesus and the people in my life? How are these things, like when I was young, and I maybe wouldn't say it like this, but I would often ask questions internally like, oh, how much can I get away with? That was a very common question, you know, and that's maybe developmentally that's important. Like you're learning to stretch boundaries or whatever. And I feel like in this season, part of what I'm praying now is like, Lord, what do I need to get away from? Like, what is not necessarily sinful or illegal or criminal, but like, yeah, that's not helping me run. That's not stirring my affections for Jesus. That's not forming me and the people I care about into Christ likeness. And that has been a unique shift in this season. Because if all we're focused on is either accomplishments or failures, which is obviously the shadow side of the same coin, you know, some of us are so concerned. Oh, my identity is only what I can accomplish, and plenty of other people are like, oh, my identity is only what I've left undone or what's been done to me. Same narrative, it's the same script. If our identity in Jesus is received, not achieved, if that is not our starting point, I think we will fool ourselves into thinking we're talking about formation when all we're really doing is just slapping a different label on it. You know what I mean? If we don't get that right, it's like it's a conversation I had with my dad. When I was 16 or 17, and I was making a bunch of really dumb decisions. So that's the decision matrix, action. And he sat me down, and he's like, "Hey, you're making some not wise decisions." And he said, you can keep doing that. What he said to me was, you will always be a Simkins, regardless of what you do. Like, that part's already secure. But then he said, I want more for you than just namesake. He's like, I want more for you than for you to just be a Simkins. I want for you, like, flourishing and life abundant. And, like, he just cast this vision for, the Simkins thing you're already there. That's him. And I feel like in our Christian walk, a lot of us are satisfied with like, yeah, I'm technically in. I've crossed the threshold. I am a Christian. I'm good to go. Like, yeah, that probably is true. It is possible to have a saved soul, but a wasted life, and that is the kind of thing that keeps me up at night. They're like, yeah, I believe you've had a genuine surrender. God has so much more for you than for you to just make this decision. He has this journey of flourishing and John 10:10 fullness that I think a lot of us become satisfied not having, because I'm good. I bear the last name, so to speak. And this second half for me, that's been the kind of thing that in a lot of ways is firing me up right now, where I want to look at our church and say, so many of us are not living nearly as free as we actually are. And that is the kind of thing that I want to give my life to, you know?
So what unlocks that freedom? If it's already ours, like, maybe I'll set it up this way. I think a lot of times, and I learned this the hard way, especially, through honest, really, really hard stuff, but because of my temperament, my wiring, I'm a very driven person. I lean toward achievement and performance, and it still is a thing I work through, even just to perform for the love of God in my life or whatever. How many of us work for things that have already been accomplished by the finished work of Jesus, and now it's less about working for those things, but stewarding from that ground floor of what he's
Yeah.
done? It makes me think of like Ephesians 2:10, for we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works,
Yes.
which God prepared beforehand that we should not think about them or dream about them, but we should walk in them. What
Yes.
are you thinking about today that gives you the on-ramp to walk in the things that God has called you to walk in today in a more accurate, wholehearted manner than even 5 years ago?
Yeah. You got such good questions, man.
Thanks, bud.
Honestly, a lot of it comes down to,
I'm hungry, dude. Let me just say,
dude, I love it.
thank you.
I love it.
I'm desperate. Where I am at right now, I'm reading The Critical Journey right now. I'm into David Benner stuff again, and I'm desperate. It's like I want it. I want it all because I want to grow.
Yeah, yeah. For what
That's
it's
why I
worth, it
asked.
shows. It always shows in your show, man. Like
Thanks,
I
man.
think it's what makes you such a great host. Is your hunger comes through really clear for what it's worth. I just think that's such a rare and beautiful gift. Yeah, there are a couple of easy answers, like you said, reading. I think that curiosity. I am embarrassed to admit how long it took me to realize how much I truly need people to speak these things to me, though. Someone could speak something verbatim that I just read in a book, and something different happens. You know what I mean? It's not so much the fact of what they said, it's the incarnational embodiment of them saying it. And I used to feel really self-reliant. As long as I can get the information in my head, then the output will be what it needs to be. So I just need to consume more information so I can create more content or whatever that is. Maybe not even content. Even content has a bit of a reputation right now. But it felt for me much more computational for much of my life. As long as I'm taking in the right information, then my trajectory will be set. And I'm realizing, and I've had those moments where I'm like, why am I crying hearing you say this? I already know this, like, know this in a cerebral sense, but to have a brother say, hey, that's not true about you, right? Or, you know that you were made for this part, right? Or that what that person said online about you understand that's not accurate, or they don't, like those moments where it's not even poetic or profound or even a new way of hearing it, but the embodiment of gospel truth with people who are actually walking with me in the same trajectory. I just believe that now more than ever, man, because I don't think I'm even really capable of fully making that shift on my own. I don't think I can think my way to transformation. And I think I really thought that I could, you know? I really believed it. And that's no knock on, I mean, I'm a teacher. I've given my life to preaching and teaching. I love learning. I love seminar. I love all of it. But
You're a ninja with
realizing,
words.
you what?
You're a ninja with words.
Oh, thank you. But even that though, and that simultaneously lowers my internal blood pressure when preaching because hey, ultimately I'm going to be faithful with whatever time and text we have, but ultimately it's actually not my responsibility to turn the light on in your soul. That's God's. And so I will do
That
the
is
best
such
I
a good
can.
word.
It is like it's been a light bulb for me. Like, yes, I want to be faithful. Dallas Willard talks about it as surrendering the outcomes. John Ortberg says that he's the only preacher he's ever seen whistle on his way to the car after preaching a sermon. Like I'm usually like, oh no, did I say this right? Did I do that right? Dallas would whistle on his way to the car because he's like, it's in God's hands now. I was diligent with my time, but my identity is not wrapped up in how people did or didn't respond. And it's actually a more mature place to say, and I'm going to trust now that the Spirit's going to do what the Spirit's going to do, and that's not on me. And that is so. I am not there yet. I haven't whistled on my way to the car on a Sunday yet. Um, but that's a heck of a vision, though, isn't it? Like, yeah, just to be so rooted in that reality. And that doesn't mean to be flippant or to squander time, resources, and any of that. but I do think those are indicators. Those are canaries in coal mines. They're like, hey, you are on the right path or you're not. Am I walking to my car every Sunday, crushed with the weight of the joke that didn't land, or the, you know what I mean? Oh, that etymology didn't make any sense, or or am I walking in freedom? Am I exhibiting the fruit of the Spirit? Shouldn't we be modeling the fruit of the Spirit after preaching something like a sermon? And yet, so often, that is almost the opposite list of how many of us are feeling, you know?
How do we index our souls to that place? And I think you and I are in a unique stage of life where we're coming out of back to strength, the fluid intelligence to the crystallized, and it's almost like the second adolescence, as Brooks would say. And there's, at least for me, there's a level of insecurity. Like, I feel like I'm relearning myself. So, like, how do we index our souls to what Dallas modeled? And here's what I want to connect it to, because recently you were talking about ambition versus faithfulness on a Sunday at the bridge. Ambition in our 20s and 30s is about climbing. So, like, relating it to what you and I get the privilege of doing. Was that a fire message? How many just like zingers did we? Right. All that, right? Ambition in midlife is what? I want to connect that again to the indexing our souls to the peace that Dallas was able to walk to his car with. Any thoughts?
Yeah, and this might even be semantics. The quote that I shared yesterday was from Mother Teresa. It was that God has not called me to be successful, He's called me to be faithful. And I don't know that necessarily, I'm sure Brooks has written about this. I'd have to sit with the word ambition a little bit. It is interesting. I think the word ambition only shows up 2 times in the New Testament, and one of them is, make it your ambition to live a quiet life. That is not going to get you book deals. That is not going to get you on the speaking circuit. Like,
Nope.
I don't hear a lot of influencers saying, hey, young preachers, young communicators, whatever. Here's the thing: you should strive to live a quiet life. I don't hear a lot of that, and maybe there's a reason for that. On the other hand, I don't want to make it sound like, hey, if you're not full Wendell Berry writing all your books on a typewriter on a farm somewhere, if you're striving for anything, that you're in sin or you're somehow out of God's. I believe that God gives us passions and desires, and those things are, James K. Smith talks about. Jesus is after not just like depositing ideas, but like our loves and longings. Like, not that our loves and longings go away, but that they're rightly calibrated to the right things. So I don't.
That's exactly what I'm getting at.
So that's what I don't want to disparage ambition, or people like, man, I'm trying to hustle. I'm like doing it with the right motives. But the thing that has been most rattling for me is those ambitions, if rightly placed and rightly ordered. Augustine's kind of disordered loves is always something to be mindful of. As long as we recognize that God does not owe us success. The moment we think that God is some kind of celestial piñata in the sky, that as long as I do X, Y, Z, He's now obligated to do these things for me, that's when, at least in my own soul, that's when things start to get out of whack. And I'm like, you owe me this, or I'm owed, or why isn't my church going faster, or my book selling more, whatever the category is. I'm like, oh, no. The invitation was faithfulness. Like, God's job is outcomes. Mine is obedience. That's for Him to determine, which is why Dallas could whistle to his car. He goes, if that sermon led to revival and 1 million people came to my church, praise God. If they don't, praise God. I was obedient with what it is that He entrusted to me, and I want to spend the next 40 walking more faithfully with that understanding. You know what I mean? So the question originally was, how do you index your soul? I don't know that I have any clue. How do you index your soul?
By messing up enough to go, stop, Chris,
Yeah.
stop. And
Yeah,
then
of course.
it's confession.
Yes.
In the presence of my mentor every Wednesday, Dave, and his name's Dave, and I said, Dave, I can't get this monkey off my back. And then confession, and then repentance. He brings the truth of the word,
Yes.
and he says, well, metanoia, let's change the direction. Let's think about it this way. here's the example. You're responsible for what he's given you. That's it.
Mm-mm.
Outcomes are his. Width is his. Impact is his. After the confession, homologeo, I'm just telling the truth.
Yeah.
I'm just telling the truth about how this is.
Yes.
I'm sick to my stomach about how this feels.
Right.
He brings me God's truth, and that catalyzes transformation. That's how it happens in like a 3-phase rhythm in my life. But it is not. It's not pretty right now because nothing feels familiar or safe right now, and so it's. Oh, you got that survival instinct, and that's sort of what I was getting at with even starting with the whole creeping into midlife thing, because there is a loneliness, and it's unique.
Yeah.
Brooks talks about it. There's a loneliness in midlife that, dude, no one warned me about.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say you and I are at midlife yet. We're early 40s, but we're headed that way.
Yeah, for sure.
There's a unique loneliness that no one warns you about. What do you do to fight that?
Ask me in 5 years, man. I think I'm so glad you mentioned confession, because it does feel like, at least in a lot of the Protestant circles we run in, there's almost this like allergy to things like confession. Like, oh, I don't need that. I go right to Jesus. I don't need to. It's kind of back to what my dad said to me. He's like, yeah, maybe you don't need to, but the Bible does talk. It does, for some reason, links healing and confession a lot. There is
James
something,
5, dude.
right? So
Yes.
so you're only as sick as your secrets. You can't heal what's hidden. All that kind of stuff. But the embodiment of another person, and the fact that you do this every Wednesday, does not surprise me. That's beautiful, man. What I also appreciate about what you said, though, is it's messy and it's painful. Like, I think a lot of times people have a picture of
It's not linear by any stretch.
it's not linear, and no one's making a watercolor of that experience, because it's like, you know what I mean? Like,
no.
it's
Right.
probably some of what's said is never going to get put on a mug. Like, it's not marketable. It's not commodifiable. And I think our appetite right now for this kind of cultural moment is like only what sells, only what gets clicks, only what gets shares. I'm like, man, if you only knew the messiness of, one, loneliness in general, two, inviting people into that loneliness, three, sometimes it falls apart. Sometimes you hear a sermon on community, and you are made in the image and likeness of a God who is communal. Go find community. And you put yourself out there, and someone stomps on your heart, or they betray you, or they don't follow through, or you're giving way more than they are. And you're like, the pastor told me to subject myself to this, and now I feel worse. Now I feel more lonely because I gave it a shot, and this community of people backstabbed me or double-crossed me or what, like it's exactly, it's nonlinear. And I think at the very least, we have to be honest about that. The loneliness, it's so weird that you bring that up, man. That has been such a theme the last couple of weeks. And so many people saying, no one told me it was going to be this lonely. Well, then let's at least start by telling people, like being forthright with, here's where some of this could go if left unchecked. And even if it does go unchecked, this is Ecclesiastes stuff, man. Like, Ecclesiastes is the book for everyone who played by the rules and still got screwed. You know what I mean? Like, this sometimes...
That makes me bristle just hearing it, because I'm such a justice warrior, and I'm like, that's not fair.
It's not. It's exactly right.
don't
It's
like
why
that
we need it.
scripture.
We need more worship songs from Ecclesiastes. We need more. My friend Aubrey Sampson has done all this beautiful work on lament. Like, we need... And I feel like culture is waking up to some of this. But honestly, some of what you're doing, man, you're giving space and voice to these things that a lot of people they're not willing to go there. And I think what you're doing is giving people permission to say, yeah, I'm desperately lonely, and I'm not alone. That's the whole CS. That's the four loves, right? You too. Even just in the you too, I think there's so much healing. It's not the whole picture, but isn't that the starting point? Like, oh, I'm not crazy for feeling this or wondering this or wrestling with this. Like, no, that's at least a good
more
starting
than half
point.
the battle.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that lifts a very heavy part of the burden to go, "Oh, I'm not crazy for thinking about this."
Yes.
It's jarring beyond belief.
I'm sorry, man.
I appreciate you saying that. It's like, imagine a coffee mug that said, "Just wait until you get into the furnace."
You're like, who? That's not going to fly off the shelves.
No. I can't imagine a book title like "Burning Off Yourself" or burning yourself away.
You should write it. I'd read that book.
I have this. I'm working on ideas for the second one right now, and
Yes.
I'm in this phase of just raw shooting out ideas, and I'm like, oh, I can't say that. No Christian publisher is going to want that. I can't say that. That's going to pop their bubble.
It's exactly why we need it, though, man. I mean,
Yeah. I am, and maybe I forgot the fact that we're recording a podcast right now. So, folks, yeah, sorry, you're in the room with Ian and me.
yeah,
right
our
now.
bad.
Yeah, oops. Thought I was just hanging with my bro, but whatever. So I just am so desperate to extend that phrase to others who are with us right now. Like, I see you. I see you. You can exhale. And
Yeah.
when you exhale and let your guard down, no one's going to reject you at face value. That is the believed lie, because when we believe a lie, we empower it. Even though it has nothing to do with truth, we're building up strongholds in the mind and in our mindset. I was literally, dude, I threw out an article on Substack this morning, and the first line was like, "You can't think your way into transformation." Exactly what you just said. And I'm like, oh.
Love it.
That's what this is about. But I think, okay, this is wild. If we get under the hood of all of this, I'm just kind of thinking about, even from maybe like a psychology perspective, I think the reflex is self-protection.
Yeah.
Back to what we talked about on the slack line, to our equilibrium is off, to what actually happens. Watch this. What happens if we give more of our energy into lifting other people up than creating content? There's this self-protective reflex in our ego-driven mindset that says, will I get left in the dust? Will I get forgotten? And of course, that extends to every domain of life. And when you're entering midlife in your early 40s, out of your late 30s, it's already a very, very difficult time of life. You're actually just grappling for stability and safety. And I think let's address the elephant in the room maybe right now, is that you're not going to find safety and stability in the things that you've leaned on for the last 20 years of your life, and that might be the point.
Yeah. Yep.
What's your take on all that?
Bro, you're straight preaching right now, man. You're exactly
Really?
right. This is like in my world, whenever we like, okay, take like the concept of biblical generosity, for example. Whenever I preach on generosity, you can feel for certain people like, boy, this just got uncomfortable, because you're talking about something close to people's. I understand, and I'll even acknowledge, hey, I know it sounds crazy that by loosening your grip, you actually find freedom. That by loving enemies and praying for those who persecute you, which is the most counterintuitive thing. When you want to armor up or lash back, Jesus just keeps offering these like really surprising, unnerving invitations. Like, I do want to recognize this sounds like madness until you actually get on the other side of doing it. The amount of stories from people that are like, I never understood why generosity mattered until I actually took one step in that direction. It's the interaction when he's calling the disciples. He's like, hey, catch anything? And they're like, no, nothing. He's like, throw it on the other side. Well, that's a pretty insane interaction, because you have professional fishermen and you have a rabbi offering fishing advice. The response could have been like, no, thanks. That doesn't make any sense. We know what we're doing. But the response is, we've already fished all night and caught nothing. But if you say so, Lord.
Oh, on the authority of your word. Yeah.
There's so much power in I don't know if that's going to work, But if you say so, that seems crazy, Jesus. But if you say so, I'm not sure how this is going to end up. But if you say so, man, I'll cast the net out one more time. And I don't know how that metaphor lands with everyone who's listening. But my guess is there are people that are like, you've kind of pulled up the nets. You're like, no more. That's it. I'm done. It just didn't pan out the way that I thought I would. And I just wonder if Jesus isn't saying, cast it out one more time. Like that Jesus can handle the front half of our doubt of I'm not, that sounds insane. I don't know that that's actually worth my time. I don't know that generosity is a better way to live. I don't know that I actually want to forgive that person. I don't know that I want to, like Chris was talking about. I'm not sure confession is for me. Um, Man, even just wrestling with that, but if you say so, Lord, I just think there's so much power and freedom in that. And we don't have to pretend or acknowledge or act like we don't still have questions about its usefulness or its functionality. I just think I'm very utilitarian by nature. I tend to run right to, will this work? Um, and I have found in this season, I feel like the Lord's been gently nudging me. He's like, that's not the first question you should be asking. Like, your definition of work might not even be correct. Did I ask you to do it? Is this what I'm inviting you into? Is that, I run right to, that doesn't seem practical. You're like, yeah, it might not be. Lowering someone through the ceiling of a house on a mat is probably not practical. Stopping and touching a leper is probably not all that practical. It's not an efficient use of your time, Jesus. Uh, Efficiency is good, man, but it's a terrible God. And I have held on to so many of those categories for way too long, and I can feel my grip on them slowly loosening in this season, and I'm here for it.
Is that why we have a call back to childlikeness? Because let me just go to the scene that you described. Luke 5 is the scripture, is the text. And when Jesus says, lower your nets, prepare for a haul, he wasn't talking to novice fishermen.
Right,
He
right.
was talking to experts who know their craft, who know
Yeah.
the waters,
Yes.
who know the time of the day, who know the procedures. And so they're like, we we can't armchair quarterback this scene because we
Right.
do. I do.
Yeah.
And I go, that's right, Jesus. Prepare for a haul. Here comes my harvest. Breakthrough season. I just got Pentecostal for a
Let's
second.
go. Let's go.
Sorry.
Don't be sorry. That's great.
But we armchair quarterback the scriptures so much because if I was in the boat and if I relate to Peter and his temperament so much, type A driven, pragmatic, utilitarian pragmatist, full tilt. And I'm like, bro, I've got the degree in this. I'm making a living in this.
Wow.
Is the invitation that you just presented us back to a childlikeness? Oh, let's connect this to where we started. In the fragility and the discomfort of the transition in life stages, where and when we would have the reflex to lean on our own understanding and insight.
Wow.
And the Lord says, though your equilibrium's off, will you lean in? Will you trust? We actually, in that very, very, very unique liminal space, have a choice to lean into childlikeness when it feels antithetical to everything we have known and everything that has been habituated into our way of being and doing and thinking.
Yeah.
Is that the invitation I hear?
Bro, you should just take the rest of the show. I just want to hear you talk about this. That is such good insight. I think, again, it's cliche to talk about my kids this much, man, but I have learned more about that concept just through watching them. Like, there's the obvious categories of like wonder and awe. They pull wonder and awe out of me unlike anything I've ever experienced in my life. Like, my boy the other day stopped to watch a line of ants walking across our deck and said, Papa, come look at these ants. I had a bunch of other things I could have been doing. And I'm like, you're captivated by ants? At a cerebral level, I'm like, yeah, I've seen ants. I don't need to see ants again. I've never seen ants the way that I saw ants with my boy. Like, that's a different thing. But what you mentioned about the fragility, I'm so compelled by. Like, it's again these sort of hyper cliche passages. But why would someone like the Apostle Paul, who I think we would agree at the very least is was an intelligent person, why would he say things like, "Oh, I'm not only okay with my weaknesses, I will boast in them." Who who boasts in weakness? Like, I want nothing more than to hide my weaknesses. I don't want them to be found out. I don't want anyone to know about this flub or this error. I will, like, my instinct is to cover all of that, cover my tracks. I'm trying to present acumen and strength and confidence. Why would any intelligent person go, "Oh yeah, I'm not only okay with you knowing them. I'm gonna boast in them." Because that's actually where I think real strength is. And kids have a way of understanding that I think in our accomplishment as adults, we just that voice gets quieted a little bit, or maybe life beats it out of us a little bit, You get your teeth kicked in a couple of times. You're like, all right, well, never again. I'm gonna bow up next time something comes in my way. Weakness feels as counterproductive as praying for those who persecute you, as throwing the nets down again. You're like, why would I do that? And Paul seemed to understand that, oh, no, man, it's actually in your frailty and your willingness to acknowledge it and lean in all the more that God does his best work. It's in the wilderness that our roots go down deepest. I don't like the wilderness. I don't want to go to the wilderness again. But I can certainly look over my shoulder and say, oh, it actually was when I felt most frail that God seemed to have done his best work in me. And there's this Nouwen quote that I've been sitting with recently, and he said, the great myth of leadership is the thought that people can be led out of the desert by someone who's never been there. When I think about the people who have been spiritual giants in my life, and you get to know their story a little bit, you're like, oh, you've also felt frail. You've also had the bottom drop out. You've also come unraveled. That's part of why what you say or write or preach or teach resonates so deeply, is you've wrestled this to the ground in a way that I haven't yet. And I think that's part of the gift. And yet ironically, I still, my instinct is to still run from it,
So how do we yield to this invitation and posture when we feel the sting of manipulation from the past, people who used these exact words, whose motivations were not pure, and now the invitation when it comes today, though it is true, because listen, like folks, we gotta walk this line carefully, because many of you are listening going, oh gosh, I actually feel really triggered right now, because I remember hearing these same words and then was later I found out it was from a manipulative source.
Yeah,
like,
right.
how do we navigate this, dude, when we feel the sting of manipulation from the past?
Yeah. Man, I'm glad you said that. For what it's worth, if you're feeling that, I'm right there with you. Brene Brown talks about armoring up.
That's it.
That language is very close to me. I armor up instinctually at the first sign of potential danger. And in some ways, if I'm being really honest, that probably has been helpful at times. Like, oh yeah, your intuition was right there. What does Jesus say? Be shrewd as serpents, gentle as doves. Some of us are maybe a little too heavy on the shrewd side, and we need to learn the gentle as doves. But some of us, I think it's just as true that maybe you've been heavy on the dove side, and it's time to be a little more shrewd. Invite more voices, more perspectives into your assessment. And I think, man, even before any of that, man, I'm just if that is you, if you have been on the receiving end of manipulative leaders, people who were charged with the task of caring for you, and instead they harmed you, I am so sorry.
Yeah, right. Amen.
One of my greatest frustrations right now is this trope that's really common. I see a lot of people posting it, and no offense, I'm just going to go there if that's okay.
Please do, because it's actually going to be my next question, believe it or not.
People will say things like, hey, if a pastor harmed you and that rattled your faith, you should ask yourself if you're following Jesus or people.
Oh, gosh,
And
that's gaslighting.
Yeah, exactly. And the amount of like amens and I don't know, man. Maybe I just have known too many people who are legitimately harmed and manipulated. Um,
Paul said, "Follow me as I follow Christ."
yeah.
So, like, imagine if that would have happened in that. Imagine that was the case study.
Yes.
What do you do with that then?
And the counter argument that I'm seeing is the disciples didn't let the actions of Judas impact their
Right.
love for Jesus. And I'm like, okay, well, Judas is our case study then. That's not. That should
We're
be
not
that's-
disciples of. Yeah.
Right, right. But that to me, and I just want to. It feels like the conversation lends this particular note. If a spiritual leader betrayed you or harmed you, and that rattled you, that is understandable. That is reasonable. That caused you to wonder and wrestle and doubt in a new way. And I am sincerely so sorry that somebody who is charged with the task of protecting and shepherding you did the opposite. And I think it is worth us calling that out wherever we see that. And God loves you just as much as he ever did and longs for you to experience wholeness and flourishing in family. And that might take time, and I understand that.
What else frustrates you about Christian subculture cliches?
How much time do we have, man?
Well, I want to respect your time, dude. Like, I know we got to start landing this plane today.
I could go all
but
day. I could go all day with you, man.
Okay.
I will say this though. Someone did ask me recently, because I will spend a fair amount of time, sometimes gently critiquing the church, the global church, and someone was making an observation. They said, "Why do you dislike the church so much?" And I said, it is quite the opposite.
Quite the opposite. Mm-hmm.
I offer these observations because I love the church and I long for her to be a place of healing and restoration and presence and formation and mission and I probably do need to. I'm not saying I do it perfectly. I'm sure there are times that I've like said something snarky online, and someone was right to call me out. They're like, hey, that's an unhelpful critique. You don't offer any solutions. You just sort of threw an arrow at your own. I think that has been true in my life for sure. But man, if we conflate just uncritical allegiance with affection, that is dangerous territory. We obviously, I think, respect and honor. I think all of that belongs in the conversation, but there is obviously, I think, and it's everyone's got their own kind of parameters and ideals of what. There's certainly like accounts right now online where I'm like, boy, all you're doing is dunking on the church. That feels tiring. I don't. Just for my own temperament, I'm like, I don't think I could exist in that space.
It's exhausting.
All the time. It is. It's exhausting. It is. My buddy had this definition of cynicism. He said, cynicism is self-fulfilling scarcity, and I don't want to live there anymore.
Jeez.
And I was like, that's such good language. He's like, yeah, there's stuff to be cynical about. Yeah, there is moral failures in the church. And also, for every celebrity failure, there's 1,000 faithful pastors that are walking with and caring for and shepherding their community. That doesn't make the failure less egregious, but it is helpful to have that perspective to know, yeah, there's a reason one's making the headlines and the others aren't. So I don't know. I go back and forth on this one, man. Sometimes I feel like my critique is justified, and then other times, if I'm being honest, I'm like, I don't think the world needs your voice on this matter, Ian. Like, it's okay for you to sit this one out,
Yeah, we don't turn on the news and see reports of the planes that landed.
Right,
safely.
exactly.
So,
Yeah,
you're right. What's something every person should start doing by age 40?
reading Strength to Strength is the.
I'd add that to the list.
Well, I've given that book to so many people.
Same.
Okay, like a habit or like a bucket list thing or
Whatever you want. It's real time for you and me, and so I'm just more or less just as a friend of just saying, there's a shadow question, bro. hook a brother up. Ha. I got called out on my own show. I'm good with it too.
Bro, I think you probably provide so much more wisdom here. I think honestly,
I don't know. I feel like my tank is empty right now.
Really?
Yeah.
There's a couple of small things, man. I have historically, and I don't know if this is what's the line in Catcher in the Rye? It's something like the mark of an immature man is that he wants to die nobly for a cause, but the mark of a mature man is that he wants to live humbly for one. It's something like that. So much of my life, I've like, oh, I want to do something grand and something great. Even like in my relationship with my wife, I'm like, oh, a blowout anniversary thing with 1,000, and yet I often struggle in the, hey man, do the dishes without being asked. Take out the, like that. And I feel like 40 has been a pivot for me. Like, take your kids on the awesome vacation. That's great. But maybe get really diligent about turning your phone off every night when you come home. I think it's a both and. I really do. But I've found so much more fruit, to be honest. And even like it's a little silly, but I've even created like a little like driveway liturgy for myself. Like as I power my phone down, like
you're the second person that said that to me in the last week.
No kidding.
Yeah,
it's been so helpful, and it's such a because sometimes the last meeting of the day humbled me, and if I'm not careful, I'm going to drag that into my home, and like these simple choices. That's what I would say. If people are like approaching 40, like man, Annie Dillard says, "How you live your day, how we live our days is how we live our lives," and it's easy to have these like these grand ideas of what we're gonna, and I think we should. Back to the ambition conversation. I realized I wasn't winning the battle on Tuesday. I was talking to my boy while also scrolling on my phone. I was burning the candle at both ends. I was, I don't know, eating garbage and assuming I'm going to live forever. And, I was just sharing this yesterday. Your questions are so weirdly timed, man. It wasn't even related to the sermon necessarily, but it ended up using it. I was reading different articles on regrets of the dying. I'm sure you've read some of these. Bro, so, I wish I had my notes open, but there's, none of them were grand. None of them were grand. They were, I wish I had allowed myself to actually express what I was feeling. I wish I hadn't lost touch with my friends. I wish I was kinder to those I loved. These are the things that people, as they're breathing their last breath, saying, I wish I'd done that. Like, why wasn't I? It wasn't, oh man, I wish I'd really gone for that promote. I mean, do that too. That's fine. But across the board, as people are breathing their last breath, they're saying, why didn't I make time for this? Why didn't I blinked and 40 years passed and I don't even know how I got here. That's the kind of stuff, man, that keeps me up at night. And when my tendency is, I'm gonna go on a silence retreat in the mountains, and I'm gonna take a life plan, and I love all that stuff, and I probably to a fault. In this next season, though, I've just been really, really mindful of, hey, Lord, I don't know. Abraham Heschel said, when I was young, I used to admire clever people, and now that I'm old, I admire kind people. That's really resonating with me right now. How am I making time for the things that actually matter most? And how am I actually doing it in a way where my calendar reflects that? It's one thing to say I value time with my kids. It's another thing like, oh yeah, but nothing about how you actually spend your time actually reflects any of that. So sure, preaching it is one thing. Posting a little black square on Instagram, that's one thing. How are you actually doing that? I'm becoming more and more ruthless with that question. Like, if it's not on my calendar, it's probably not happening. And what is that an indication of? Is that an indication of like, maybe you don't actually care about it that much, and that needs to change, you know?
We'll start to land this plane. I was thinking about this in my own life just yesterday, so I'll ask you, like, is there a belief or approach that you held really closely 5 years ago that you totally disagree with today?
Oh, man.
There is for me.
Do you have one?
Yeah. In my wiring, in my temperament, I can easily see life black and white and don't make a ton of space in here for nuance. Because the text says this, just do what the text says.
Right.
And I fully believe in that. But the latter, with time, with pain, with learning compassion in a greater way, I've learned people want fewer solutions, just more presence. It's not to say we don't step into providing a roadmap to transformation and wholeness and steps to help. But, my parents were, my mom was, my dad is therapists. And, they always said to my sister and me growing up, like, our best lane as professional counselors is not when we give people answers or tell them what to think, but teach them how to think.
Yeah.
So back to reflect it on me, what's an approach I totally disagree with that I used to just want to, with good motivation, want to fix people and help people.
Right.
But I disagree with that approach. I want to be way slower to the starting gun and actually attend and gather information and not be ready to...
Yes.
I mean, the motivation isn't wrong. I really want to help people.
Right.
But it's ill-timed help.
Wow.
That is less helpful.
Yeah.
And so that's the approach I disagree with, that I held so dearly 5 years ago.
Wow. That's like the idea you can be right in the wrong way.
That's exactly, you said it way better than I just did. Yes.
That's another, not to keep quoting Willard. I think this is a safe place to quote Willard. But he said, and this is maybe not in the same context, but he said one of the hardest things in the world is to be right and not harm people with it. Like I can feel it through the screen, man. You're like, I desperately actually want, it comes from a truly altruistic place. And yet,
I so want to help people.
When we don't take the time to actually give it the space that it needs, and underneath that is a whole bunch of other things. We feel like space is wasted time, or I already have all the information I need, or I know what you need to do. All well-meaning things, man. But honestly, in a weird way, I can relate to a lot of that because 4 years ago we moved from Chicago to Nashville. Those are very different contexts, and I have learned in a more macro sense. It is not wise for you to preach in exactly the same way you've been preaching or lead in the same way you've been leading. This is a new community in a new context. And I think I thought more of that would be transferable. Oh, great. I've already been doing this 15 years. I can bring a lot of it. And some of it was totally helpful. Some of what the Lord showed me, some of what I've learned, way more of it was not helpful and not useful. And that took me longer to realize. We're like, oh yeah, I'll just do a series on this, or we'll apply this to our governance or our structure. And it was like, oh, you need to learn these people and this context and this time and this place. And that feels like such 101 level stuff, man. But it was, I don't know that I did a great job at first in being receptive to that reality. And that, thankfully, this is just an incredibly gracious community here that has walked with me as I've kind of learned them and they've learned me. But yeah, I wouldn't say I nailed that upon entry.
All right, we'll land here today because I want to get you home to Katie and the boys and all that. Just be respectful. I just love time with you and could go longer, but we'll land here today. What's the best question you've asked someone lately that's helped shape you, form you, redirect mindset approach?
Wow, what? You can't end on notes like these, man. Goodness gracious.
Bro, this is what happens when I'm with you. Look at Ian. You guys are watching on YouTube. I got 2 pages of Ian Simkins notes. I haven't even
Can I steal it? This is actually in this season. It's an old question that I heard Andy Stanley ask that has been helpful in this
Bring
season.
it on. Yeah, bring it on.
How did he say it? He makes it rhyme. What's it like to be on the other side of me? And this
Carrie Newhoff said that in a podcast meeting to us.
Yes.
Within the last little bit, and I'm like, oh, that stung.
It does sting, but in the right way though. And I'm learning, even just in leadership. Sometimes what I share as sort of like a what I think is a casual hallway conversation is hitting with a different gravity than I intended to, simply by nature of the role. And so like learning to be more proactive and saying, like, what's it like to be in a one-on-one with me? Like what's it like to be on the like I think I'm making it lighthearted by making these jokes, but maybe you think I'm being dismissive by offering these jokes, or just be more inquisitive about. Tell me what it's like, not in any kind of formal 360 way, and tell me how my, what my enneagram is or whatever. But like to say, just walk me through your experience. I've tried to be much more intentional. Anytime anyone's new on staff here, just to have a half hour to like hear their story. How can I come alongside you? How can I help you flourish and thrive here? And then to open that invitation as early as possible. Hey, this is an open door invitation. You don't have to wait till we schedule the next one of these. If you're seeing something or you're feeling something, even like I want to know that. And that has been, I've been so proud of our team for how willing they've been share they've been how willing they've been to share their real experiences. And some of it does sting. Some of that means opening yourself up to like, oh, I did not mean that way, or I had no idea you were feeling that. That has been very, very illuminating for me. And I'm very, very grateful. That's a great question.
Just to bring it forward for folks, give us that question one more time.
What's it like to be on the other side of me? I think that's what it is.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we were Gary, because Carrie, I think, knows Andy or whatever, and in a podcast network meeting, he had shared that, and then he shared it a bunch, and I'm going, oh, I don't like that. It's really hard.
Because it takes all the control out of your hands. You curate. You have a podcast space or a preaching space. A lot of that is curated, and we get to and that's
Well said,
it's a
Ian.
gift that we get to
It's curated.
be a
Yeah.
part of that. But for someone to say, yeah, I don't think you mean it this way, but when you say this or when you act like that,
Oh,
you know,
bro.
that can be painful, but it's also really freeing. Like, okay, now I know, and I'm grateful for a team that's willing to actually go there with me and not say, oh no, you're great, everything's great. They'll tell me, and that is I'm very, very blessed by them.
What's something you know about me that I don't know that I need to know is one of the questions I like to ask the guy I meet with, and I think it carries a similar heartbeat, but man, I love that.
Can you say that again?
Yeah. What do you know about me that I don't know that I need to know?
Wow. Yes.
It's the invitation to say, show me my blind spot.
Yeah. Yes. Very similar. I love that.
So
good.
Ian Simkins, you are incredible. I'm thankful for you, dude. I believe in you so much. I really do. My conversations with you are never really planned. I never thought we'd go here today. And I threw the notes out the window at question 2.
Love it, man.
I'm
You are a
thankful for
gem, man. I am sincerely honored.
Thanks, bud.
Not only to be on your show, which is a gift, but just to call you a friend and a brother, man. I'm
Thank
in
you,
your
sir.
corner, and I'm very,
Thank
very
you.
grateful for you.
Thanks for your time today. Hey, real fast, actually, not that we don't have notes from past episodes, but is there anything fresh or anything you're working on that you want folks to track with? Or just like at the bridge or?
Yeah, check out the Bridge.
Okay.
Bridge.tv, man. That's where
Love
a lot
it.
of my time and energy is going right now, and we're
Grammy winner.
oh boy, Phew. How wild is that, man? Not me. I'm not. Just to be clear I'm not a Grammy winner, but Bridge Worship is making some serious waves. Shout out to CeCe Winans though. She's the queen. I think is what
That's
gave,
my king,
she
right?
Gave, she gave that yes sir. She gave that song some wings it didn't have, man, and pretty grateful for that. It's been really cool actually to see
I'm
what
so
the Lord
proud.
is doing through the artists and songwriters of this community. It's been awesome.
It's good. Dude, thanks for being here. Seriously,
Thanks for having me, man.
what a joy.